Hello and welcome to Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week. My name is Eve Canavan, one of the co-founders of the week, and we are marking year 10 with our theme being A Decade of Voices. Today, I am really delighted to be joined by a friend of mine who is Debbie Sells, who's the ward manager for the Margaret Oats Mother and Baby unit. Hello,
Hi, Lee. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
This is
Delighted
a
to
really
be here today.
I'm thrilled. I was saying this is a real full circle moment for me because Debbie knew me when I was poorly all those years ago and supported my recovery. So this is a really wonderful full circle moment for me. So thank you for being here and a massive, massive thank you for the work that you do. I know over the last 10 years, particularly in Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week, we have put a real focus on women and families being able to get specialist help when needed. And one of the things that we are very often asked to talk about um, is mother and baby units and what they are and kind of what's the word, demystify them, what they are. And so we thought we'd do today kind of a 20-minute quick session talking to you as somebody who's a ward manager about what they are, kind of what people could expect when they go in, and kind of maybe some of the misconceptions that I think we know
Mm,
people have about
mm,
mother and baby units, because I remember I had no idea kind of what I was
mm.
going into. So I'm really grateful for you to be here today.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay.
I'll
So
try and do that for you.
you can do. You'll be lovely. You're the best. You're the best.
Mm.
So people hear us talk about it constantly, but what is a mother and baby unit, Debbie?
So, a mother and baby unit is a specialist psychiatric ward, in essence, for women who are suffering from a severe mental illness, and that may be in pregnancy or postpartum. So, we would typically take women from 32 weeks gestation up to a year postpartum. Um, these ladies are suffering from a serious mental illness, some of which is a psychiatric emergency, which needs quick care and treatment. But the benefit is that you would bring your baby with you, and be able to do as much care as you can while you're there with us.
Oh, thank you for that. And I think as someone who's been in mother and baby unit, I had never heard of one before
Mm.
I went into one. Well, actually, probably about the week before I went in, my husband started researching them, and as just from a bit of personal experience, for me, it was just a real pillar of support at a time when I felt so utterly befuddled by what was going on with me. And I think for my family as well, I think for them it was knowing that I was going into a really safe and, for me, kind, warm, and supportive place with staff who had experience of supporting families like ours. But I definitely know through the work that I do, and I definitely know from talking to my own partner before I went into one, people aren't really sure what they are and may have some misconceptions about mother and baby units. So I wondered, could you talk about maybe what some of those misconceptions are, and can we kind of bust a few of those myths?
Mm. Well, I think the it's the fear, isn't it? Often women and their families are particularly frightened and scared when the thought of sending their loved one and their baby, often first time mums, into a psychiatric ward, which in essence what we're asking people to come into. And I think that a lot of sort of the media portrays psychiatric wards in a certain way. The fear that social care might be involved, that we might take babies away from women. I think they're sort of the major common misconceptions that we would hear. And then when women walk through the door, when their partners come along, the families, they're pleasantly surprised, because I think on the whole, mother and baby units are very different to a typical psychiatric ward. And they're more homely. There's stuff around, it's like a home from home environment, particularly with us in Nottingham. There's, I don't know, loads of baby toys, there's arts and crafts type things. It's a very different setup from a acute psychiatric ward. Most mother and baby units have a video tour on YouTube or another media platform, which I think is really helpful to use for women who can have the ability to have, they're not being admitted in an emergency situation, that them and their families can have a look and be reassured actually that it's not the scary, horrendous place that people believe it's going to be.
And I'm so glad you said that. I think we have a couple of times done videos around mother and baby units, one which is in our YouTube channel, so I'll link it to this, where we went round East London mother and baby unit during
Mm.
COVID, which was a particularly difficult time for people, being separated from people anybody anyway, and then having to go into somewhere like an MBU. And it was a real thing to open it up to show people what it looks like and the kind of environment that you go into. And I think as someone who's been in one, I cannot, for me, emphasize enough how it was like this. I always say, I felt like I was in a moment where I was the most scared in my life, at the most vulnerable time of my life, when my baby was 6 months old, and and had really struggled to access the right kind of care. And until then, because I was so poorly, it was so wonderful to go into a place where I felt like people were, and they were. It wasn't just feeling; they were genuinely interested and wanted to support me and help me get better. And my family were incredibly reassured by the environment that my son and I were going into. And I think that's one of the next questions I wanted to ask you, Debbie. How do you involve partners and families in the wider care of somebody going into the unit?
Um, we would welcome families and partners at all times. I mean, for us in Nottingham, we do have visiting times actually, which came about from COVID, but we can be flexible in that, because I think we have to appreciate that some women are coming from a long way away, and that, they can't just come 2 till 6 or whatever. So there is some flexibility in that. Partners, whoever that lady would want their chosen one to be, would be actively involved in their care if they wanted to. They'd regularly be invited to ward rounds, where we would determine the next sort of steps. So dad or mum or whoever may be involved would have their say in that process. The staff will routinely check in with the family, a weekly basis, if not more often if they wanted to. And we have a particular member of staff who runs a support sort of drop-in session once a month for families, and that isn't about that lady's care in particular, but a sort of how that person may be feeling, who's supporting the family. But we would certainly welcome families to be as involved as they want to be, and signpost if needed to their in their own right. I think this, we concentrate on the mum in this moment because she's the person who's unwell, but actually I think the dad or the family member who's never experienced a mental illness before is equally, if not more, scared than the woman, particularly then leaving at the end of the day, leaving their wife, leaving their baby, the sort of the two most precious things really in their lives, and they're leaving them with a group of strangers and hoping that they're going to be looked after, which of course they are. But families don't realise that in the moment, do they? I think that's quite tricky for the whole family.
And I think there's that thing sometimes, as you say, some people have the time to maybe review things before they go into one and talk through things with their family. But there are those emergency instances where people are, admitted, maybe after attending casualty, or numerous other referral routes and other reasons. And there is
And
that
often these women,
absolute fear.
often
No,
these
go.
people, these ladies have never been ill in this way before,
Yeah.
and they're acutely unwell, psychotic or manic or whatever you want to call it, but really out of character to how they would be normally, and everyone around them is frightened, and and in the midst of that we have also got a little baby that we have to consider. And I think, yeah, it's a very terrifying time for the whole family, and as staff we need to make that as easy and as pleasant if possible as we can.
And I'll tell you one of the things that I really appreciate, having been on the unit and now being associated with so many people who've been on them. And thankfully, this is a shared experience that, that I talk about and other people had as well. I remember feeling so incredibly grateful that even at my most ill, the people looking after me in my mother and baby unit would sit and talk to me about the treatment options. What did I think a treatment plan could look like? Just so that I felt and that I was included in conversations, even when I wasn't well at all. It was so important that I was including them. And I was so grateful that my partner was able to sit in and be with me and be part of those conversations as well. It truly felt like massive collaborative care. And it's something that my partner and I talk about to this day, because he will talk about the fact that when we turned up 16 years ago to mother and baby unit with no clue about anything, the massive reassurance, I've said this before, within basically the first 5 to 10 seconds of going in, seeing what the world looked like first of all, completely different to, I think, misconceptions of a, or
Yeah,
preconceptions of a psychiatric ward.
yeah,
And seeing that I was in a warm and stable environment with staff who had seen things like this before, but also knowing the first thing that you need before anything is reassurance and kindness. And, and I think that for me, I just remember that feeling of collaborative care, even at my worst, just felt so important. And also the fact that you talk so nicely and beautifully there about the fact that there's a small baby involved here that needs to be looked after and supported and cared for, but actually the woman coming in is really poorly at the most vulnerable time of her life and needs to get better so she can look after and care for and
absolutely.
help her baby to
Mm.
grow. And I
That's the
just,
whole
I think,
ethos, isn't it, of them?
yeah,
Is, we're supporting the lady to take care of her baby, and even at a woman's illest, she can still do that with support. And the whole thing, I think, of taking the baby away from her, yes, it might be useful at times, get some sleep, such like, but actually, ultimately we want that lady to care for that woman. And I think it's, no, did I say that right? That baby, the woman
yeah, you
care for the
did.
baby. But anyway,
Baby, yeah,
I think as staff we have the privilege of having time to sit and often just be, to hold that lady, allow her to be reassured. If she's scared, to give her that reassurance and just be sometimes. And that's so powerful for staff to have that ability to be and just hold that woman. And I think that's, a skill in itself, really.
yeah, a massive skill and one that's done so beautifully well. I was going to ask you about going home time. Now, you go
Mm,
into unit, we talk an awful lot about going into the unit. What are units like? I've done it here.
mm.
What does going home time look like? What does discharge look like?
I think that's equally as scary for some ladies, to be
It is.
honest, because
It is.
you're there, you've got people around you all the time, and albeit we may not be doing much for you as leave and discharge crops up, but actually, again, it's just that being held, I think, and having that confidence. But what we would typically do is, it can be tricky depending on how far away the lady will live, but we would have staggered leave. So there would be, like, an afternoon or a day or a night, and then that would gradually be built up, and we would ensure that the community teams are supporting that lady at home, and have, being told when she's coming home, or actually being involved in that decision making. And so, most women will have a CPN, possibly a nursery nurse or some other professional within the community. So, we would make sure that those professionals are involved and can support whilst at home. Our beds are that if a lady goes on leave, she knows that her bed will be there, so they can always give us a call, come back, if leave was too much. But it would be a gradual leave, you know, in collaboration together, in a timely manner. Sometimes ladies might need a little bit of a push to go because they're scared, and again, then it's almost like starting again. I think, they've had that support and then they've had to go home with their families and almost sort of begin that parenting journey alone, from the beginning again. But it would certainly be very led by her and stay staggered. That's a gradual discharge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think these things, it makes you feel safe. I was definitely one of those
Mm,
ones that was clinging
mm,
to, clinging to my unit and not wanting to leave. But I had a
mm,
CPN and I had home leave and and
yeah,
built it up, and I think it's an incredibly supportive model. To wrap up, um, in terms of referrals to mother and baby units, because we also know a lot of healthcare professionals look at these little videos, Debbie, and go,
mm,
oh, I've
mm,
heard about them, didn't
mm.
really know much about them, this, that, and the other. Referral routes can look different in different ways in different areas. I'm aware of that. But kind of genuinely, as an overview, how does someone get a referral to a mother and baby unit, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, so most women would, it would be a professional referral from, it might be that, if it's the early sort of stages of a postpartum psychosis, then the family may contact GP or take that lady to A&E, and we'd sort of get a route that way. It may be that the lady's presented at a GP and then the GP will refer in. It may be that some of the ladies are already under the perinatal community teams and things have deteriorated, and they get a referral in that way. So it can be through a variety of sort of professional routes, really. There's no sort of self-referral currently for inpatient beds, but you know, if anyone did call us, we would then refer her, signpost her onto the right process to go down.
Lovely. Thank you. Right, I'm going to wrap up there today because I think I am so pleased to have done this in the our big year of Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week, where we're talking about a decade of voices and real people's experiences shaping the
Amazing.
week. And it is so important that we celebrate and mark and thank the healthcare professionals that support us in our recovery journeys. And a huge part of that is demystifying the things that can help us to get better. And the Margaret's Mother and Baby Unit is a wonderful unit with wonderful staff who are always so open to support. And with that, Debbie, I really want to thank you personally for everything that you've done.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. And it's I think as a team, we very much feel it's a massive privilege to look after women. And, we play a very small part in someone's life, but through some work we've been doing on the unit recently, we realise that just one sentence, one comment, a touch of a hand, a hug, that's what women will take away from them. And I think, if anyone is being offered an admission or worried about coming into a mother and baby unit, then please try not to be. It's not the scary place people think they are, and it's a safe, reassuring, supportive environment that makes recovery quicker.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate
No,
everything
it's
that you
been a
do.
pleasure. No, thank you.
So lovely.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.